Welcome to Unshuffling the Pharaoh Shuffle. I'm Paul Gertner. The purpose of this DVD is twofold. First, I want to convince you that learning to perform the Pharaoh Shuffle is within the range of anyone who really wants to learn it. Yes, it will take time and quite a bit of practice, but I can guarantee that performing a perfect Pharaoh Shuffle is not beyond the skill level of the average magician. Now, I wouldn't say that about other card and coin techniques, where I do feel that there is a natural ability at play, but the Pharaoh Shuffle is mainly about knowing and understanding the proper technique. And that is the first thing you're going to learn on this DVD. I can't tell you how many times I've watched magicians struggling with the Pharaoh Shuffle, and the main problem is they've spent many hours practicing it, but they were practicing it all wrong. I calculate I've done more than 500,000 perfect Pharaoh Shuffles since I learned to do it in 1970. That translates into having Pharaoh Shuffled over 26 million individual cards. With that much practice, I've learned a few shortcuts, and I'm going to teach you what I've learned about on this DVD. Once I have you performing 8 perfect Pharaoh Shuffles in 60 seconds or less, I'm going to teach you how to perform my, in fact, unshuffled, my all-time favorite magic trick to do. If I only have a chance to do just one trick, and one trick only for a spectator, unshuffled is the one I always choose. It packs small, and for a close-up trick, oh, it plays big. The additional feature of it is that it's customizable for many different situations. I think it's safe to say I've made more money with this one card trick in the way of closing deals and impressing clients than any other trick I do. And to those magicians who already do unshuffled, not only do you now have a quality hand-lettered unshuffled deck, but I'm going to show you some fine points that will have those Pharaoh Shuffles coming together even faster. Okay, so I've just made a lot of promises. Now it's time for me to put my money where my mouth is. Let's start unshuffling the Pharaoh Shuffle. Well, now we're ready to begin unshuffled. I'll perform it head-on, one-on-one, so you can see how I perform it in front of an audience, and then I'll go into the explanation detail by detail. Well, I'd like to show you something with a deck of marked cards. Now, you can see they're marked cards because, well, they say marked cards. But these cards are marked in a very unique way. You know, John, if I gave you this card and I said, look for the marks, you would examine the back pattern and see if you could find any kind of distinguishing mark that would tell me that's an ace of hearts. But you won't see anything because I mark them on the edge. These are edge-marked cards. I mark them with an invisible or a translucent ink, and I have special lenses in my glasses, and I can see the marks, but no one else can. You know, when I tell people that, though, no one really believes me. So to demonstrate, I mark the balance of the cards with black ink, so that you can see the marks on the edge even if you don't have special lenses in your glasses. Now, if you take a close look at the cards, you can see they're all mixed up. Red and black, hearts, clubs, diamonds, and spades. And I'm going to have one card selected from the deck. So as I drop the cards, would you do me a favor and just say stop? Right there? Now, look at the card, remember the name of that card. I'm going to place your card in the deck, and I'm going to lose it in the deck with what I call an unshuffle. It's just the opposite of shuffling cards. You see, to perform an unshuffle, I divide the deck exactly in half. Let me check. Perfect. 26 and 26. I can tell by the weight. And then I give the cards a perfect unshuffle. with every card interwoven between every other card. And if I've shuffled the cards perfectly, you can see the deck now starts to read unshuffled 4 times on the side of the deck. Now that means these cards have been unshuffled into 4 different categories: hearts, clubs, spades, and diamonds. But if I give the cards another perfect unshuffle, 26, 26, perfect. I really can tell by the weight. And if I unshuffle the cards, you see the cards are being unshuffled now into 2 categories. All the red cards are in one group, and all the black cards are in the other. Now, I'll give the cards one final unshuffle. And wait. Okay, you know what? I made a little mistake. This is a little heavier than this. John, you can probably see from the angle, how many off do you think I am? Just 2? You're right. Yeah, actually, it's a 2 of hearts. It kind of cut you a break on that one. But if I give the cards one final unshuffle, as you can see, this deck of cards is completely unshuffled. And if it says unshuffled, I have to show you that they are in fact unshuffled. If you take a look, ace through king, hearts, clubs, spades, and diamonds, every card is now in perfect, brand new deck order. Oh, there is one minor detail. In the beginning, John, you selected a card. It's somewhere here in the unshuffled deck. I won't look for your card face up because they're all sequential. It wouldn't impress you. I could find it very quickly. Instead, I'll try to find your card face down. What was the name of your card? The 8 of hearts? That's about 17 cards down from the top of the deck. Watch closely. If I give the cards one more unshuffle, take a look, because there it is. If I rearrange the cards, your 8 of hearts. You see, I get you the answers you need every single time. Thank you. Okay, now we're ready to go into the explanation. First, I think a little history is in order. People have often asked where the idea for this trick originated. As I explained and detailed when I originally published it in both my lecture notes in 1976 and in Harry Lorraine's Best of Friends, I saw the original concept in Genie magazine, in Charlie Miller's Magicana column, November 1973 issue. In that column, a gentleman named Dr. Ewer detailed the concept of writing words on the side of a deck of cards and having them reappear 4, then 2, and then 1 time in the process of doing perfect faro shuffles. There have been suggestions that this concept of writing on the side of a deck was also used in wartime for passing codes. If you knew the proper order to place the deck in, then the code or the words on the side of the deck would become visible. Well, a few issues later, Bob Wicks wrote into Genie magazine, and in Charlie Miller's column, he suggested a number of ideas for things to write on the side of the deck that could be used with this interesting principle. The 2 that appealed to me most were the ideas of drawing a small little monsters from the then popular video game Space Invaders on the side of the deck, and his other idea of writing unshuffled on the side of the deck, and then after a series of faros showing the cards were indeed unshuffled in brand new deck order. I quickly latched onto Bob's clever idea and developed it into a trick, adding the concept of having a card selected and at the end having the word unshuffled morph into the name of the selected card. In an early version, I would also spell down to the selected card before I had its name appear on the side of the deck, but it seemed to be a bit of overkill. The presentational concept of having the writing 4 times, then 2 times, relate to 4 suits and 2 colors, red and black, came about as the routine was being developed. Being new in the trade show magic field, I quickly saw the value of having a brand or company name magically appear on the side of the deck instead of the word unshuffled. And early on, this became one of my trademark trade show routines. I currently have a collection of about 1,000 customized unshuffled decks of playing cards that feature everything from the names of companies and products to the names of wedding couples or the bar mitzvah celebrant that I've used with this trick over the past 34 years. So when I tell you it's my favorite trick, you can see that I really do mean that. But right now it's time to unshuffle the faro shuffle. So to perform unshuffled, you're going to use a deck of playing cards that look just like this. In fact, it's the exact same pack that came with this DVD. Now, I usually mark this box up. It says marked cards, and use the gag as I take them out at the very beginning of the trick. But we're going to have to first prepare to do the trick, and that is to do 5 faro shuffles to set the deck up. Now, the deck, it consists of a deck that says unshuffled on one side, and I hate to disappoint you, but it says 8 of hearts on the other. Okay, that's the basic idea, and that's the morphing of the word unshuffled into 8 of hearts. Not real magic, but pretty good magic. And the rest of the deck is in perfect order, or in what we call new deck order. You'll notice there's ace through king of spades, ace through king of diamonds, but then it reverses and starts with the king of clubs to the ace of clubs and the king of hearts to the ace of hearts. Now there's one final additional change, and that is if you hold the deck of unshuffled just like this and run your thumb up the back, you'll feel a little break on one of the cards. It just so happens to be on the 8 of hearts right here. And what you do is you take, and you don't have to do this, it's already done on your cards, is the corner of the 8 of hearts has been shorted just with a nail clipper, so that when you run your finger up the back of the cards, it will break, and you can easily find that 8 of hearts, so you can very quickly do a riffle force or a dribble force of that card. But we'll get into that in a moment. Let's try to set up the deck first. First, setting up the deck, putting the cards in the faro shuffle position that you've learned. You're going to give the cards 5 perfect out faros, which means the ace of hearts is going to always stay on top. So the first time we broke at the king of clubs, the second time we're breaking at the ace of diamonds. The next time we are breaking at the 7 of clubs. The next time we break at the 4 of diamonds. And one more, and we're all set, and we break at the 9 of spades. And we're now ready to put the cards in the box and begin. If you were to look very carefully at the cards right there, you can actually see that they now say unshuffled 8 times on the side of the deck. It's very hard to see, but it's there. Okay? The cards go in the box in this manner so that when I slide them out, unshuffled is facing the audience, and now we're ready to begin. You take the cards out of the box, show the words unshuffled, use any gag you'd like about marked cards, bring them out. I usually bring them out, one card out first, which is the top card, the ace of hearts. The reason I do that is the ace of hearts and the ace of spades have no marks on them at all. We do that intentionally so that by looking at the top of the card, you can't tell there's anything written on the back cards back here because the ace covers that fact. And I bring it out initially and hand it to somebody and ask them to look for the marks, and they usually look at the back design or the pattern. And then I tell them I marked them on the edge. And I mark it with translucent or invisible ink, special lenses in my glasses. I get a little bit of a laugh on that, and then I say, no, I'll prove it. And I bring the rest of the cards out and show that, in fact, they are all marked. Notice the ace comes on top so that it covers, again, the second card down. And I hold the cards like this and show the marks on the cards. If I'm working with a large group around me, you'll notice that you can actually hold the cards like this, and it's almost like an edge grip when you're doing a coin trick, okay? The angle of the thumb and the back of the hand covers the marks on the back, so that somebody back here can never see that I have marks on both sides of the card. The only thing we ever really want them to know about are the marks up here. We don't really want them to think there's an image back there at all. Okay? Now, I turn the cards end for end, and again, since there's no marks on the ace, everything looks clean, and I can spread the cards on the table, showing them to be all mixed up. You want to point that out. You can also, alternatively, just turn the cards end for end and spread them in your hand, like this, or you can hold them like this, turning them end for end this way, so that the 8 of hearts image back here stays towards you, and fan them out toward the audience in this direction, okay? If I'm working without a table, which I often am. And then I square up the cards, take them in my hand, and turn over, and again, protecting this back side of the deck at all times. I then tell them I'd like them to select a card, and I ripple my thumb up and as I riffle my thumb up the back of the deck, I hit the brake. Once I hit the brake, it automatically clicks down. I can feel it, and I know that I'm going to be able to force the top card. This is the 8 of hearts. So I click up, hit the brake. You catch your brake. I ask someone to just say stop. And as I riffle the cards, they say stop, and I do a dribble force, stop, dropping all the cards at the brake. I could also do a riffle force and just say stop, and just pick up all the cards at the brake and put these down, and sometimes then show it like this. But the choice is really up to you. I prefer the just say stop, the dribble. I then push it over, and I take it in my hand so I can do everything with one hand. Notice where my fingers are. My fingers are protecting that other side of the 8 so they can't see any marked images on the other side in case there's a little bit of bleed, which there usually is. While I'm showing this around, I'm keeping the brake right here. Okay? So as I say stop, dribble, I push this over. At the same time as I slide this 8 out to show it around, I keep my little finger in the brake right there on the cards. That's important. I can then take the 8 and place it back into the deck, square it up, and I can even table the deck if I want. Everything is under control. Now we're going to perform the shuffles. Now for the shuffling sequence, I'm going to explain that I'll perform what we call an unshuffle. And you holding the deck in Pharaoh position, you perform the first perfect Pharaoh, dividing the deck. If you'd like, you can play with the idea of weighing the cards. I often do that, where I sort of balance them out. And I say, oh, wait, yes, perfect, 26 and 26. Because if they see you shuffling the cards perfectly, they buy into the fact that you can actually weigh them at the same time. And again, the first shuffle, we're breaking at the 5 of spades. So you have the cards, you break the deck at the 5 of spades, 5 of hearts comes first, and then the 5 of spades. So all you have to do for this trick is remember 5 of spades, 3 of spades, 2 of spades. Those are your 3 cards during the performance. And then you do 5 pharaohs in between to reset. But 5 of spades, 3 of spades, 2 of spades. First one's 5 of spades. I perform the pharaoh. When you're doing it, you want to make sure you buckle the cards. You can place your finger up there to hold it for a second and then let them bridge down. You'll notice I'm not squaring them up right away. I'm letting them come down so that they're altered, so that I can hold them very still, and I then take and bring them in. And I often bring them in so that they see the first word appear at the top. So I square them up from the top down to the bottom. So they see the word unshuffled, and then they see the other 3 unshuffled. And they can see it says unshuffled 4 times on the side of the deck, which means the cards have been unshuffled into 4 categories: hearts, clubs, spades, and diamonds, the 4 suits. That makes sense. Okay? Next, and again, if I'm with a crowd, I can turn it around. If you're ever doing this with camera or for video on like a TV spot or for a video commercial, you want to keep don't move out of frame is what I'm saying. You want to turn it so people can see it, but yet the camera can stay in focus. And you don't want to come forward because the camera has focused in on those words. So you want to keep it within the plane that the camera is shooting on so the focus stays as sharp and as clear as possible. But again, I can protect all around if I need to and show it all around over here. I then come in and I do another pharaoh. Now, if I have audience back here, I'm going to do the pharaohs more like this, so that this side is being toward the floor. If I don't have audience back here, I may do the pharaohs higher, so that the whole audience can see and appreciate as the cards come together just like that. And again, you let them come together, but you do not square them up until the last moment, and then they see the words magically appear unshuffled. And it now says unshuffled 2 times. And that time I split it at the 3 of spades. Okay? Finally, we give the cards one more unshuffle. The 2 of spades is our split card. However, I sometimes throw this little bit of business in. I sometimes pick up at the 2 of hearts. And I split the cards and I sense the weight. And then I go, oh, wait. Wait a minute. I'm not looking, but this half is a little heavier than this half. John, you're a little close. You have a good angle. How many off do you think I am? Usually they'll say 1 or 2. If they say 1, I'll say you were right on, and I toss 1 card across. If they say 2, I say you're right, the 2 of hearts. I kind of cut you a break on that one. If they say more, I just say no. I'm never more than 1 or 2 off. There it is, and I adjust it. But anyway, it just adds another little element to it from a performance standpoint if you like to play with that. And I then square up the cards. Now, after I do this, though, you'll notice that I do have to square these cards up a little bit because I don't want to bring them together again. So I use the top of the deck to square it. I come down, and now I get into my faro position, and I butt the edges to get them into the right angle, and now I'm ready to perform. And then we bring it together, one final unshuffle, and at this point it's very important that you again don't push in too much, let them fall together, but again let it be jumbled so that you square it up at the last moment and they see the magic happens just like that. It's as magical of an effect you can get with a deck of cards. And again, they see the words unshuffled, and then you immediately point out, not only that, but if it says unshuffled, I have to prove it. Now, we can prove it a few different ways. If I'm working on a table, I will turn them end for end, and I'll spread them on the table, showing they're all unshuffled. On the other hand, if I'm not working on a table, I will turn it end for end, just like this. Again, I'm protecting the 8 of hearts. It's toward me. And I then start to fan them out, just like this. And I might even say, and they've been unshuffled. Look, the ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king of hearts, clubs, diamonds, spades, every card in perfect order. And build on that at the end. That is, if I'm spreading them out in my hands, like that. And finally, we've shown the cards to be all in perfect order. I square them up from right to left. Again, notice I'm keeping the word unshuffled toward the audience, hiding this. And then I say, but there's one minor detail. In the beginning, you selected a card. It's somewhere here in the unshuffled deck. And I call attention to what the word on the deck is. I fan out the cards. I turn them face up. Okay, and now I spread them out a little bit, but notice what I'm doing. I'm displacing the cards. Okay, I'm just displacing them a little bit, moving some out and some in so that I can say, but I won't look for them face up. That's too easy. I'll find your card, and I square up the deck from the back to the front, face down. And if you followed along with me, what you've just done is you've shifted the 8 of hearts from back here to out here. So that whenever I square them up right now, if I did, it would say 8 of hearts, you see? But it doesn't because they can't see what it says just yet. And then I do square them up, but as I square them up, I hide it with my thumb. And I say, but you selected a card. What was the name of your card? And then they tell me for the first time, 8 of hearts. And I say, 8 of hearts. It's about 17 cards down from the top. Let me see if I can do this. If I give the cards one more unshuffle, and here all I do is spring the cards. I didn't shuffle them, didn't do anything, but I spring the cards. As far as the lay audience is concerned, I just shuffled them again. They hear the sound. To them, that's a shuffle. And I spring the cards, which displaces them. So they can't tell what's written there. And now I call their attention to the unshuffled. I say, but you watch closely. If I shifted the right 28 cards, I often mention, you know, if I spring the cards and if I give the cards, if I adjust, reposition, or if I reshift 22 cards, and if I hit the right 22 cards, I think we'll hit it. There it is, your 8 of hearts. And as far as they're concerned, I shuffled the cards one more time. This used to say unshuffled. It now says 8 of hearts. And that's the end of the trick. And that, you have my favorite card trick, unshuffled. So go back, look at it, go piece by piece through the trick. You'll like it. You'll learn it, and I guarantee you'll use it. I know there are many, many magicians out there already doing this. I've seen it in many different countries all over the world and on YouTube videos, and I hope you enjoy learning unshuffled. Now, before you open the deck of cards, I'd like to suggest that you keep this custom hand-lettered unshuffled deck that came with the trick in the box until you learn how to do a perfect faro shuffle. You should use another deck of cards to practice the shuffle with, because you will destroy a number of decks in the process of learning to do a faro shuffle. You will want to save the custom deck and use it only once you have mastered the technique. During the learning process, you will flatten or dog ear the edges of some of the cards, which will make it impossible to perform a perfect faro. And the only thing you can do then is throw the deck out and start with a new one. I'd hate to see you ruin your custom deck before you've had the chance to see the impact this trick has on an audience. Open up a fresh deck of playing cards and let's begin. Remember, you're not working with your custom unshuffled deck at this point. Keep it in the box until you've mastered the faro shuffle. Okay, well, we're ready to start learning the faro shuffle. Now, just so that you can see the cards are being shuffled, I'm going to use the unshuffled deck. As I mentioned, I'd suggest you just grab a brand new deck of cards. You're going to remove the two jokers, the advertising cards, and you want them in brand new deck order, just like this. Okay, so it starts with the ace of hearts, goes to the king, then there's the ace of clubs to the king of clubs, king of diamonds goes to ace of diamonds, and the king of spades to ace of spades. If your deck is not in that order, take a moment, set it up that way so that you can follow me with the shuffles. Okay? Now, we'll talk a little bit about different brands of cards. I use bicycle playing cards for this all the time. They seem to be very good, decent quality. The edges are cut fairly well and they work well. Every once in a while, in fact, there's a time a number of years ago where bicycle playing cards were a little bit more of a rough cut on the edges, and I had some problems with that when trying to faro shuffle. But bicycles, I've used Aristocrat, I've used Tally-Ho, and those are the brands that I'm most familiar with. But again, bicycles seem to be working well. I like the quality of them, and they're recognizable by the general public. So, the edges of the deck are important. Okay, if you open up a deck of cards and you feel it is very rough on the edges, basically don't even plan to try to do a faro shuffle with it. Just simply use that deck of cards for another trick or another purpose. But again, find one that is smooth, and most of them are. Every once in a while they get those rough cuts, though. Be aware of those. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is, the first part of the faro shuffle is how you hold the deck. And this is where I see a major part of the problem happening when people are attempting to do the faro shuffle. Often they're holding back and they're holding the cards too far back, and often they're holding the edges too close. Basically two similar problems in the sense that they're not allowing the cards to be flexible enough to perform the shuffle. So, if you take a deck of cards, and I'll give you some guidelines to go by. All right, we're going to first divide the deck. Now, I start off by taking the cards in my left hand. Notice the thumb is just about in the middle of the deck, just about in the center of the deck, maybe a small amount closer to me. Okay, a little more of this side is showing than this. And as I said, we're going to go into some fine details because that's what it's all about. I'm also controlling the position of all the cards because I have my index finger on the end, okay, and I have my three other fingers back here. So essentially I've got a nice even grip, keeping the cards fairly straight. That's a starting position. All right? Now, when you're going to do the faro shuffle, I suggest you perform it in this manner, where you lift up on the back of the pack. This gives me the ability to peek at the cards as I'm riffling through them. Now, with this setup, I know that once I see a queen and then the king of diamonds, the next card is the one I'm going to break on. When I'm doing the trick unshuffled, because we're doing a sequential faro shuffle, 8 of them in a row, we're always breaking at the same cards. Of course, if you're doing a faro shuffle for another trick, you have to be able to visually look at the cards and gauge that there are an equal number of cards here to this group here. It can be done, and it's very, very doable. Very quickly, you'll notice the difference between one more card here and one less card here. It will be very obvious to you if you work with the cards for a long time. But initially, it's kind of hard to see, and that's why the beauty is that the unshuffled trick, basically you don't have to worry about that. All I have to do is, the first time I have to look for the king of clubs in this case, and there it is. All right? But I'm not teaching you the trick on shuffle yet, so we're not going to worry about the breaks and so on. I'm just trying to show you the technique of the faro shuffle. So place the cards in your starting position. Okay? Again, thumb approximately in the center, a little closer towards you. You're then going to, with your other thumb, pull up on the cards. Now, how are we doing that? This fingertip in your right hand puts pressure on the back of the card. And in the process of putting pressure on the back of the card, my thumb lifts up, I'm able to peek in, and I break the cards exactly at the halfway point. Again, in this case, we look for the king of clubs. Once we have broken the cards at the halfway point, just like this, you bring them back, and I'm now holding them for a second right here by my thumb and third finger of the left hand. And I transfer the grip so that now I'm holding the top stock in my right hand, as you see. Now again, it's very important. I have about 1.25 inches showing here. I don't want to be too close. I don't want to be too far back, but 1.25 inches seems to work just about right. Now the reason for that is flexibility, okay? This flexes, and because this has some distance between the thumb and the finger, this flexes. And that's a big part of performing the shuffle. Next, we're going to bring the cards together. And here's possibly the best piece of information I can give you about the faro shuffle, and that is this finger here, okay? Many times I see people attempting to faro shuffle the cards visually by bringing them together with no control finger on top. It can be done. It's taught that way many times. But it's not as quick or as effective as using the fingertip to control how the cards come together at the top. I can actually feel if I'm in the right place. So notice as I bring them back, I butt the edges. And this is another key important detail. As I'm butting the edges together, I'm actually angling these down at a slight V angle. So I'm angling them, I'm going to exaggerate it just so you can see. That's what I'm doing in a very, very subtle manner. So I don't do it that exaggerated, I do it like that. And then the same thing happens because of the angle of the cards, okay? These cards are getting butted, exaggerated, there, looks like that. But really I don't exaggerate it that much, just like that. So both of those, if I were to put them perfectly even together, they would form an A shape right there where they come together, okay? And it's a very subtle A shape, okay? And again, notice what happens here is after you break it at the center, come across and butt, your thumb moves back just a bit so that now the thumb is not in the center, it's even a little closer, okay? Again, giving me a little more control here. So as I butt the cards together, angling them to an A shape, I'm now bringing the edges of the cards together. But if you were to look right in the very center, there's an A shape so that I have this half card starting on top. I'm doing what we call an out faro, which means the top card stays on top. Okay? And as I do that, they start to come together, just like that. Now, what's causing them to come together so easily? It's the angle and it's the pressure. Okay? I have the angle that I showed you by butting them together. That gives me the angle of the cards. The pressure is a light pressure put against the cards starting from the top down. I'm not jamming them all together from start to finish. I'm putting them together starting with the top cards that slowly interweave down, and then they blend together. Now there's one additional piece of information that I'm doing that's very hard to see on video because of the depth. I'm also moving this hand backwards. I'm moving it from here backwards slightly as I do it. So there's a push, there's a pressure inward, and there's a pressure backwards. What this is doing is this is letting the cards very subtly come together with backwards pressure in addition to forwards pressure. So these are all the fine points and the details that I talked about. And you're going to take and initially bring them together. You can feel with your fingertip. You can feel with your fingertip if you've done it correctly. I can actually run this fingertip across the card, and if I had two cards there, I could tell. If the card on my left hand was on top, I could tell. The fingertip is a check, and I do that in dark rooms. If I'm doing this in a low light room, I can bring them together, check, and if I made a mistake, I can reweave, rebut, reweave, and bring them back together again. Now, once they start to weave, it's just a matter of pushing them together. I transfer the grip so that we're now holding them together right there, and I come over here and I, holding the arc of the bridge with my fingertip, I let it go, and that's where you get the nice shuffle sequence, and then you square them up and you've completed a perfect Pharaoh shuffle. Okay, now let's review with a start and stop technique. I'm going to go through the shuffle, you're going to do it, and I'm occasionally going to say stop, check your position, and we'll take a look if there's somewhere or something you're doing that's going to make it more difficult for you to perform the technique. So, start with the cards in the opening position, which means the thumb is not quite in the center, a little closer to you. Okay, so there's about maybe an inch here and an inch and a quarter over here. Index finger right at the end. Three fingers comfortably gripping the cards. Notice how far the tips of the fingers are above the cards. Okay, we don't want it like this. We don't want it too high. We want it just about right so you have as much control as possible. I come in here and I lift up looking for my break. In this case, I'm looking for the ace of diamonds. If you're sticking with me after that first shuffle, you should be looking for the ace of diamonds too. You break the cards, come back, and stop and check your position. Okay? Are you holding the cards here between the index, between the third finger and the thumb? You're still holding these firm here, and this one is on the forward group. The little finger is not really in play at this point in time. Okay? It can actually be up and out of the way. I then come back and shift position, taking the cards, and we do the butt. Now here, make sure that you are actually angling these cards in with the help of the edge of this deck, while at the same time you are angling these cards in so that they stick a little more out on top than they do on the bottom by angling them in by tilting this deck this way a bit. As you can see, this way points them that way, this angle points in. We're exaggerating it. That's what you would have, an exaggerated A shape, but of course we don't want it to be that much. We just want a slightly exaggerated A shape. Okay? Now, again, do a check in terms of how you're holding these cards. Here, and look at your hand very carefully in relationship to mine. Okay? Are you holding them too far here? You're going to have a problem. Okay? Are you holding them too close here? You're going to have a problem. If you hold them right about here, and I have to get into it so that I can show you properly. Okay? Just about an inch of space between your thumb and your index finger. Is your index finger extended enough so that it can be right here on the tip? So that the pad of your index finger is literally just over the lip of the cards. That's where you want it to be, because that's what's going to check to make sure they're joining up correctly. Okay? And the rest of the cards are in the hand. Notice they're fairly deep in my hand. Okay? I'm not holding them down like this, because I don't have as much control over them. I'm holding them fairly deep in my hands so that I have control over this whole group of cards. When I start to butt them in, this flexibility and this flexibility are going to let them smoothly come together. Okay? Now, we've done a check there. Now, the next, we've done the butt, we've done the check on how we're holding them. You have them in position. Now, bring the edges together. Okay? Now this is where you can visually help yourself. You can bring them close enough to your eyes, okay? Especially if you have bifocals, you might have to do that like me. And I can see that the top card is in fact above the card on my left-hand side. So I can see that I'm doing a proper out Pharaoh. And this ace of hearts will stay on top. Visually do that. Now, when you do it for a long time, you can actually get to the point where you can almost do it just by touch. Okay, you could even do blindfolded. I've played with that, and you can hit them sometimes. But by looking carefully, I bring them in and I butt them together. Now, if you're doing the faro and if you've practiced it for many years, a different technique, this will be hard to change, all right? Because I'm showing you a different holding and a different handling of this move. And if you've been used to doing them like this, we're doing it different. And notice we're changing positions. Try it this way. Play with it for a few weeks. I can guarantee you, if you learn it with more control, it will be much faster and much easier to do and more secure, okay? I often see people holding them up like this, attempting to do it. But again, the major mistake I see made with the faro is the attempt to bring them together, number one, without any control finger, and number two, to try to bring them together all at once. And this is where you'll dog ear them or jam them together, and as opposed to bringing them together, starting at the top, slow down, and slowly down the length of that A shape. Okay? So we're now here. We're bringing the edges together. I've looked to make sure I've got the one on top, and then I'm pushing not just in, and I'm not really pushing in. I'm letting the flexibility of the cards do most of the work. Okay? So there's very little forward pressure this way. Mostly I'm butting them against each other and I'm pushing backwards. A subtle push backwards, and they will come together. So if you were to look at the end result of my faro shuffle closely right here, you can see that this deck is a little further in this direction. Now I'm exaggerating it, of course, but if I were to do it in this way, it's very subtle, but it is. It's slightly back a small, tiny measurement. And, but that's from me pushing the cards backwards just a bit during the course of the shuffle. Once we get them to this point, the work, of course, as you know, or the hard work at least, is done. We're pushing them in to the point where I can take over with the thumb and the finger. I'm then coming here and pushing up with the index finger of the left hand and doing the buckle so that we can, or the bridge, so we can let them come down. And in the course of shuffling them, we've squared them up and we've done another perfect faro shuffle. So that is the main technique I use. A little bit of a different handling, work with it. When you get the cards and shuffle them together, they will very, very smoothly come together. I'll do this a couple times, so as I'm doing it, you can kind of keep up with me or attempt to perform the shuffle. And I'll see if there's anything else I can point out to you about the movement, but they are coming together just like that. And one more or two more, we should be back to where we started. It's now saying unshuffled on the side of this deck 4 times, and we'll be going into the trick in just a moment. And then, if I give it another unshuffle, and again, it now says unshuffled 2 times and 1 more time. Now, let me show you 1 or 2 things, though. Occasionally, something can happen, like you have split the deck properly, you're starting to shuffle the cards, and you notice, I'll try to make a mistake here, and you'll notice that you're not hitting it perfect. At that point, what you have to do is you have to reweave and do it again. And a simple way is just simply to reweave the cards. It's usually easier to just square them up and then pick up the break and start again. Sometimes you can, if you make a mistake, for instance, there I did an in faro, the ace is under the card over here, I would reweave and I can square up and rebutt them again. But sometimes you still have little spaces in here if you try that technique, and it's easier to just square it up, reweave, and now you have firm grips on all the cards, and you can then take and perform the faro shuffle again and correct your mistake. And now we're back to it saying unshuffled, and if we were to take a look at this deck of cards, everything is back into perfect position. 8 faro shuffles brings us back to where we started, and that's the idea behind the trick unshuffle. So I would like to point out, if you have any questions, And if you're working on learning the Pharaoh Shuffle, since you've purchased this DVD, don't hesitate to email me with any questions whatsoever. I'm always intrigued when someone says, now, here's a problem I'm having. Almost in 100% of the cases, I can listen to what your problem is, or in some cases, look at someone doing it on video and understand, wait a minute, if you move your finger a little here, if you don't put as much pressure there, it will change the dynamics and the shuffle will work. So don't hesitate to email me any questions you have. I'll respond to you and give you my best input for assisting you and getting you to be able to perfect technique also. I want you to learn this. I want you to do this trick. I want you to show other magicians that it can be done. Okay? Now, we're going to take a short break here. I will reset my deck and we'll come back, and then we're going to learn unshuffled. Now, when you're performing the Pharaoh Shuffle and you're using a brand new deck order, the same cards, you break at the exact same cards every single time. And when you do unshuffled, that's the same case. So just to review that with you, and of course all these are detailed in the PDF instructions that are part of this DVD. Initially we're breaking at the King of Clubs and performing the first Pharaoh Shuffle. And the second card then is a break at the Ace of Diamonds. All right. Then the nice thing is, since they're all in the same position, you know that the minute you see the Seven of Diamonds, the next card you're going to break at is the Seven of Clubs. So essentially, not only do you use the cards that you break at to peek at, but you use the cards before them. So coming up here, I see the Four of Diamonds and the Four of Hearts, so I know Four of Diamonds is my next breaking point. And then the next is, I watch for the Nine of Hearts, which the next card is the Nine of Spades. Okay, and we're now see right there, if I went in, I can just immediately reweave and come out and then hit it. The next one would be the Five of Spades, and the final one, at least, or the final two, I should say, would be the Three of Spades, and then I come to the Two of Spades. And those are all the break cards that we're using to split the deck perfectly in half each time. Okay? Now that you've got the technique and you've been working with the technique of the Pharaoh Shuffle, the best thing you can do with the video, as I mentioned, is to go back and review it again and again and again, watching the small little details as I'm pointing out how to hold the cards and where to put the pressure. Remember, it is a very, very light pressure that's put here, very light. And as I'm doing it, notice what's happening is the cards are bending down. They are actually bending down, forming a V shape as they're coming together. And as they bend down and I push backwards, I then cause them to go together. But you'll do notice that they do bend down like that lightly as the cards come together, just like that. Now you'll notice right here I have two cards on top, two cards on the bottom. So I can immediately look at that and know, whoa, there's a problem there. I can reweave or square up and resplit, and now I do it again. Now, one final detail with the Pharaoh is I bring my finger across the card. And I do that if I have any concern as to whether I hit it. You probably didn't see me do that too many times here because I can tell by looking at the bottom connection and seeing that everything is perfect throughout that I didn't need to do the check. But in a darker environment, I often do the check here to see if I'm okay. Now here, take a note, I can see there's a mistake there, okay? Because I should have this card on the bottom, not this one over here. So the minute I see a mistake, I can reweave and come back and hit it, and then I'm ready to go. People sometimes ask, what happens if you miss? If you perform a shuffle and it's not perfect, will the trick still work? Well, I'll show you what happens in that case. If I give the cards a couple more shuffles, I'll set it up at the beginning position and I'll intentionally make a mistake. And you can see what happens with the words on the side of the deck, and I'll show you ways I handle it. If we're ready to do the trick, It says unshuffled 8 times. This is the starting position. If you make a mistake on the very first shuffle, it's problematic because chances are it's going to be very hard to read what the words say as you go down the line. If you are 1 card off on the second or the third shuffle, it's not as much of a problem because you can still make out the words. You may not be able to show them, or you won't be able to show them if they're in perfect order, but you can still at least get the one effect out of it, which is the word unshuffled, and it still will change to the word 8 of hearts, just using the standard method that we talked about so far. But let's assume that we have done the first shuffle and that's worked. But let's assume that somewhere along this second shuffle, we don't notice that we were off. And instead of having just 1 card here, I had 2 cards on that side. I'm even going 2 cards off here. Now, it's very difficult to read, as you can see. It says unshuffled, but you can still make it out, but you have to kind of help them to see it. And if I give the cards one more unshuffle, just like this, again, now, once the cards are off, you're on your own as far as where to break the cards. You have to literally know which is the halfway point. And if I give it an unshuffle like that, you can see what I'm saying. It still says unshuffled. It's hard to read. Now, here's the key point. They don't know that this is not what it's supposed to look like. So you can just simply pretend it's like a barcode. It's hard to see, but you can still make it out. Watch, and there it is, unshuffled. The only problem is if it says unshuffled, why would you not show them that the cards are unshuffled? Because they aren't. So doing the trick when it says unshuffled and they're not unshuffled is problematic. If I'm doing it with a company name on here, I can still get around it because it still at least says Pitney Bowes or Babcock & Wilcox or Westinghouse, and they can still make out the company name. But, so that gives you a little handle on what to do. Basically, the best thing to do is if you notice there's a problem, reweave right away and do a double check and make sure that you don't have an issue. You can see it still says it, and I could still do this. Well, they're not perfectly unshuffled, but watch carefully. I'll see if I can find your card, and there it is, your 8 of hearts. Again, a little hard to read, but it does say 8 of hearts. Okay? Now, you can put anything you want on an unshuffled deck. Usually I'm putting a company name or a product name just to give you an idea, of many of them. This is one of many boxes I have that have different products or company names on them. Sometimes if I'm doing a wedding, I'll put the name of the bride and the groom on the side of the deck with a little heart in the middle. And if you're doing this, then it's always nice on the other side when it changes to have it say 8 of hearts, but the of is in red. So it sort of matches up with the red on the heart on this side. So lots of different ideas, lots of different ways to use the trick. I hope you enjoy it. It's a great trick. And thanks very much for buying this DVD, Unshuffling the Pharaoh Shuffle. Well, I hope you've enjoyed Unshuffling the Pharaoh Shuffle. You're going to put in many hours of perfecting the shuffle, but once you see the reaction you get, I know it will be worth it. The best way to use this video is to come back to it again and again as you work on learning the technique. Chances are, the first few times through, you will breeze over some fine points and details that just did not seem like a big deal. But you will realize their importance after the 4th or 5th viewing. As I said at the beginning, it is the very fine, tiny details that I mentioned that can be the difference between struggling and hitting a perfect Pharaoh shuffle every time. Watch it again with the cards in hand, and you'll start to catch mistakes you're making and my suggestions for correcting them. Check each finger position and angle against what I'm doing on the video. I truly believe that if you follow my instructions, you will be hitting those 8 pharaohs in 60 seconds or less. When you do, email us a video and we'll post it on our website to show others that it can be done. Thanks again for supporting all of the products from the Paul Gertner Group and Paul Gertner Magic. Our goal is to create unique magical effects and combine them with professional presentations for both amateur and professional magicians around the world. I'm glad you joined me for Unshuffling the Pharaoh Shuffle. May all of your shuffles be perfect. See you next time.